So welcome everyone to the IBASA EPI Webinar Series. Our topic today is exploring the opportunities in rescuing small and micro businesses in distress. So the focus is a bit more on the opportunities that we as practitioners can pursue in this space. Sometimes we may get stuck behind the notion that business rescue is only the formal process that's allowed for in the Companies Act, but we've got Mwendabai, Kalaluka, and Dr. Kenneth Moodley in the room here today to enlighten us in terms of exactly what the direction is business rescue is taking, as well as other turnaround opportunities that we as practitioners may add to our service offering. So it is a bit more focused on ourselves today and what we can do with our businesses or the services that we render. Welcome everyone in the room. Also to Mpho Mofikoe, who's the MD of IBASA. Last chance, select the ones that apply to you best. And then we're going to end the poll and I'll share the results with everyone so we can all see it. Mwendabai and Kenneth, it would be great for you guys to comment on this too. But what is clear is that in the room, a lot of people are saying they are skilling themselves. In fact, 2/3 of us in the room today are saying they're busy skilling themselves to do business rescue. So this is the right place to be, because that's the topic of discussion here for today. Then a good 10%, 9% are registered business rescue practitioners. That's interesting. It's higher than I thought it would be. And 6% are preparing themselves to do so. Then a good 16% have participated in complex turnaround or rescue projects, and 13% in other. So that's a quarter. A quarter of the people have actually, in fact, participated in rescue projects or turnaround projects as well. So that's interesting, Kenneth and Mwendabai, if you can reflect on that a bit. But let's start with you, Mwendabai, because we have you next on our agenda. I'm going to stop the sharing of the poll so we can start with our discussion. We know you, Mwendabai, already as the leading figure at IBASA. As far as business rescue is concerned, you also a member of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition's Business Rescue Liaison Committee. So welcome here today. We will allow today lots of time for engagement, for questions and so on. So if you want to ask a question, best is to click the Q&A button on the taskbar there and then log your question there. Then we will for sure be able to attend it. And then you can use the text chat to share your ideas and say hello and so on, as I see some of us have done. Valhalla, Pinda, Nomvuyo, Mercy, Akiza, thanks for participating. I think, sort of while our events are virtual and the ability to participate is limited, we can use these opportunities to do so too. So Mwendabai, I'm going to hand over to you to get us going on the discussion. As I say, sort of people in the room can all note their questions and make comments, and we can participate in the text chat too on the side if you wish. So over to you, Mwendabai.
Thank you so much, Christoff, for the introduction, and good morning to all the listeners who've joined us on this webinar. And thank you for the comprehensive introduction, Chris. I'm actually very excited about the poll that was obviously just run before this session, because that actually does highlight exactly where we want to be in terms of business rescue. I love the fact that 69% of, I think, us were actually able to state that we are in actual fact upskilling ourselves for business rescue. And in the next very short presentation, you're going to see exactly the reason why that is important. So I'm not too sure, Chris, if we can just maybe get to that slide presentation. There we go. I think in 2020, sometimes last year, maybe around April or May, we did run a webinar in conjunction with the CIPC, where we discussed to great extent, the program of business rescue. And there was so much interest that was generated from there. People saying they've heard about this, but they don't know exactly what it is. And I think a lot of information was shared on that session. For today, we specifically want to look at opportunities and specifically targeting business advisors. All right, we are looking at opportunities in business rescue with a focus on business advisors. Now, if you would recall, I'm not too sure how many of us had attended that webinar, but I think at some point the CIPC presenter did indicate some statistics in terms of business rescue and its successes. And to date, we are still in a position where we can say our success rate in terms of business rescue is not more than 10%. Now, if you think about it, that's very low in terms of what the legislators and the academics and all the other stakeholders who came up with the Chapter 6 provisions, what they anticipated to achieve. So at less than 10% of success in business rescue, that's pretty low. So over time, by the way, the business rescue was only introduced with the New Companies Act 2008. So it's a pretty much new kind of sphere for everyone, including the legislations. But what I think has been observed over the years in terms of why is business rescue not successful is because I think all of us tend to focus, if you can check on the slide, we tend to focus on the orange segment, which is the formal business rescue in terms of Chapter 6 of the Companies Act. Now, Chapter 6 of the Companies Act, it's a perfect piece of legislation, or maybe perfect is an overstatement, but we know what it was intended to achieve. But the biggest failure in business rescue is actually that, I don't know if you can see the picture on the left, that by the time companies do actually approach and come for business rescue, there's very little to rescue because the call for help actually comes pretty much late, all right? So I think one of the academics in business rescue said, business rescue is not for the terminally ill. So essentially what we are saying there is you do not wait until it's an ICU case for you then to institute business rescue proceedings, because then in that case, there will be no success. You don't take a terminally ill person and then try to resuscitate them at that particular point. So the missing link, which the regulator in this case, which is CIPC, is very much aware of, is the section in the green block, which, interesting enough, it's something that we are all participating in. So some of us might say, well, we don't know about business rescue, or we've never been involved in it. But in actual sense, we have all participated in rescuing entities. It's just a question of in what phase have we participated. And a lot of us are not aware that we are in actual fact just making reference to an incorrect phase, because that green phase that you're actually seeing there is in actual fact business rescue. It is not formal business rescue in a legal sense. It's not covered by legislation, but in actual fact, it is business rescue in a practical sense. So coming back to the point where I was saying, we tend to then sort of like approach business rescue much, much later than it should be, is because I think we ought tend to ignore the green segment, that in actual fact, the successful rescuing of businesses happens within the turnaround space. So this is the space where us as business advisors are already trading in. We already advise businesses. We advise businesses in terms of their growth prospects and growth strategies that they can employ. When businesses start sort of like, you know, anticipating decline, as you can see, you as a business advisor will be able to spot that. You know, we then start to advise companies in terms of how they can maybe restructure their processes, restructure their, their operations to become more cost effective and so forth. Okay, and in actual fact, this is really what business rescue is about. So if you look at turnaround, what we are saying and what CIPC has come to realize is that the prospect of successfully turning around an organization is much higher in that green space than it is in the orange space. So which means all of us who in actual fact do participate in that green space, in the turnaround space, which I want to believe is the majority of us around the table, is that we actually have a huge role to play in order for us to ensure that the businesses do not get to the terminal ill stage where they then have to file for formal business rescue. And just out of interest and just for information of everyone, that the only key difference really between the green space and the orange space is in terms of the legislation, that when you normally go into the green space, you are now filing for formal rescue. So you are filing your COR 123 forms. This is now where you actually go to the CIPC and you draw resolutions and you undertake all the steps to go into formal business rescue. Okay, that's what happens in the orange space. But I'm going to share with you, Christoff, maybe we can just stay on this slide maybe for the next 3 minutes, a very practical case which we had in 2020. And this is actually a client who approached me, and they essentially came and said, look, we have a business. This is what the business does. We are distressed because we cannot trade, all right? And the issue why they couldn't trade is that they couldn't get orders. Okay, the reason why they couldn't get orders is that they had a huge debt with the South African Revenue Service. So because of that debt, essentially, they were non-compliant, and therefore then they couldn't approach, the major customers to issue orders. So the proposal then that came to me was, why don't we go through business rescue? All right, so then I got the proposal and I studied it. And I think after a day or two, we had the meeting again with the client where we said, all right, so we can see where the area of discomfort is. And yes, the business is in a very bad shape at the moment. Obviously, if you can't trade, you can't generate revenue, you cannot meet obligations, you cannot pay staff. Some employees were laid off and stuff like that. But then the question that was important that was posed, which I essentially posed with the client was, is it really necessary for us to go through formal rescue? Because what we see here is a situation where you are sitting with SARS as your biggest creditor. So why don't we, without filing for a rescue, why don't we approach SARS and put our case on the table to say, SARS, we have a problem here and only you can help us. And if you help us, we'll be able to help you, because if we get compliant and we get orders and we begin trading, then we should be able to service the debt that we owe you. And to make the story short, essentially, we managed to get what we call a payment arrangement with SARS. The debt was restructured, to affordable bits, and the client got a tax clearance, and they were able to get to begin trading. So essentially, if you look at that process, that was a turnaround process, which didn't necessarily have to go through a formal business rescue space. So I think the essence of the discussion today is to say, we all can actively contribute and participate in the area of turnaround and business rescue without, in actual fact, going through the formal business rescue process. Thank you, Chris. Okay, and then...
I do what I normally accuse other people of doing and not muting. So we're very fortunate, by the way, everyone in the room, that Mwendabai is quite active with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition in addressing the new developments in this space. So, there are challenges that we've noted, and there are also new opportunities coming open due to some shifts in thinking, I think, Mwendabai. So I'm looking forward to hear from you, sort of what those shifts are and how the challenges are being addressed.
No, that is perfect. Thank you so much, Chris. So I think if you just proceed to the next slide after that. Normally, when we discuss business rescue, the concern of most stakeholders, especially practitioners, including the business advisors, is that one, the business rescue space is highly legislated, which is very true. The second part is that the business rescue space is very stressful because of all the legal battles, and in most cases you spend a lot of time in court. That is also true. The third complaint that CIPC is also aware of is the fact that there are very few practitioners who get afforded the opportunities to actually participate in formal business rescue, which again, it is also true, because what will happen is, I think from the previous presentations where we discussed in terms of how a business goes into business rescue, you will know that a creditor, as one of the most powerful affected parties, normally plays a critical role in the appointment of a business rescue practitioner. So unless if the business rescue process is by court order or by process of court, in actual fact, the creditor actually do appoint the management would normally appoint, the directors would appoint a business rescue practitioner who's then voted for by the creditors. So in that case, what you notice or what has been found was that the big creditors actually have a very influential role in selecting business rescue practitioners. And obviously they'll have BRPs that they like to work with. So there are very few BRPs that have the biggest share of the opportunities in the market, unfortunately. CIPC is aware of that particular problem, and you can see there in terms of the key developments that they actually called most of the key stakeholders in the industry. So in terms of the industry here, we're talking about CIPC itself, who's the regulator within the business rescue space. And we all know that CIPC is really a child of DTI. So from a legislative perspective, Parliament recognizes DTI. So whenever we have to sort of like push legislation, it has to go through DTI. So we actually have a representative from the Department of Trade and Industry. And we all know that SARS is always a major creditor in every business. So SARS is part of that particular committee. And essentially what the Business Rescue Liaison Committee has attempted to do is to address the challenges which we just spoke about. So just very quickly there, without taking much time, Chris, the key initiatives that we've sort of like come up so far. One was obviously establishing the committee, which sort of like establishes a platform for all the stakeholders to interact. So we've got professional bodies. IBASA is one of those accredited professional bodies where we come to the table and we obviously discuss matters affecting the industry. But also the CIPC is highly pushing for what we call inclusiveness within that particular space. So they want to see more BRPs coming into play. And what they've then sort of like done is they are trying to create a conducive environment. And one of the key possible legislative changes, is not yet into effect, but it's coming soon, is that they are going to push that for companies with a PI score of more than 350, which is normally only reserved for what we call senior business rescue practitioners. There's going to be a suggestion or sort of like a push to have senior BRPs having to work with junior BRPs, because we do have a lot of junior BRPs on our database, but most of the junior BRPs in actual fact do not qualify to get a lot of these appointments. All right. Then other than that, we are now looking at in terms of CIPC pushing the professional bodies. So we did have the CIPC conduct a visit at IBASA where they looked at our structure, our setup in terms of business rescue, and also what as an institution, what we are doing to promote access in terms of the BRP space, how we promote business rescue within our institution. In other words, giving opportunities for everyone to come on. So there's going to be a lot of push, not only to IBASA, but to all the professional bodies like your SICAs, your CIBAs, all the professional bodies which are accredited. By the way, there are 13 in total, that they need to push what we call transformation. So they want to see more women involvement in terms of business rescue. They want to see more previously disadvantaged people also getting into that space. So In as much as we might feel that there isn't a lot of opportunities, I can guarantee you that there is, in actual fact, a lot of push for a lot of opportunities to open up. And lastly, Chris, just before I leave the platform, the message we got from the Department of Small Business Development is that they're also developing a framework of a more user-friendly business rescue framework that is going to be applicable to small and medium-sized enterprises. The reason being, the current Chapter 6 is not conducive for your small to medium-sized businesses because it's expensive because of the cost of the BRPs. So there is actually developments in that particular area, and we'll be able to communicate that in due course. But when that opens up, what you want to do as a business advisor is you want to be ready to be able to participate. And therefore, we need to upskill ourselves so that we can catch that opportunity once it opens up. Thank you so much.
Great stuff. So, I mean, the notion that you have to be a formally registered business rescue practitioner to do turnaround, of course, I got in the first part of what you were saying, Mwendabai, is not true, because there are lots of turnaround projects that are not necessarily business rescue. So if I position myself as a turnaround specialist, I don't necessarily need to be a business rescue practitioner. I can focus on projects that are not suitable for business rescue. So that's great news for a lot of us that find the business rescue process perhaps a bit too formalistic for the needs of our specific clients. And secondly, you know, sort of what you're saying is that in fact, in that formal process, there may be scope for junior people to be junior practitioners to be incorporated in big projects, which is a great learning experience. So Mpho, you're feeling the heat there from CIPC in terms of what IBASA is doing around business rescue?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mwendabai. I mean, I'm glad we went through that session together with Mwendabai during when CIPC did the visit, and we are feeling the heat. But we were able to at least narrate from a strategic perspective. They were very pleased with some of the concept that we put together from a strategic perspective. By the way, we've put together a strategy for IBASA, and in that we've incorporated all these things from a transformation perspective. That gave the assurance that at least we're not just waiting for them to tell us what to do. We're taking the initiative, and we even emphasize. I mean, you know me, Chris. Every time when I come through this platform, I'm a big advocate of transformation and, you know, inclusive from previously disadvantaged individuals, more women participating in our space because it's a male-dominated environment, more youth getting opportunities so that they can really solve the real problem because they are the future from a solution perspective. And I think what we need to also talk more about today is to highlight, yes, we are talking about the opportunities that are existing. To also, as advisors, we need to also, when we prepare for those opportunities, how do we deal with the threats that might come up in the process? Because in those, without creating a balance between the two, you're running the risk of going into a battle or a war without fully being prepared. And we need to advise our clients properly and make sure that they understand that as much as this is what we are trying to help them with, here are the threats and the opportunities from a business advisor perspective that we need to prepare ourselves with.
Yeah. So it starts with perhaps attending a webinar like this, but it needs to go further. But most of us do have some experience, as we've seen, you know, sort of in working with businesses under stress. So what are, in your opinion, and this is now that your opportunity to type in the text chat as a participant, your opinions, so that we can take that into account in the discussion too. What are those challenges that small firms are having? So Mwendabai told us about the Department of Small Business Development, looking specifically at how smaller firms that are experiencing distress can be supported. And it, of course, starts with addressing those challenges that they have in getting the right kind of direction and support. So when it comes to business rescue or turnaround, in your experience, what are the biggest challenges? And it can be more than one challenge. You can use the text chat to type in there. And I see Pearl has started by saying, asking rather, are there any processes or applications available to source possible turnaround rescue projects? You know, sort of, so if there are businesses that are needing support, is there a way, perhaps Mpho, you can later on respond to that one. But if we can start off by just sharing some of our experiences. I think a good quarter reported that they've been involved in projects before, or those that have not been involved in projects may not be involved in projects because of the, the hurdles in starting projects like that. So pause. This is another Mpho. We've got 2 Mphos on the call here today. What are the biggest causes of business distress, especially SMEs? Once we know these, at least the top 5, we can proactively measure and put the measures in place. If we say the challenge is that we actually don't understand the causes so well, I think that's what Mpho is saying. Any other ideas? It's rather quiet in the text chat. Perhaps it's new for most of us, therefore we are quiet. But I've seen some names in there of people that I know that have done substantial projects. So Mercy say, Mwendabai, it's a compliment for you that you've been thorough and precise in what you've presented, and that it's informative, particularly because this is a prevailing concern for small businesses. Yeah, and of course the pandemic has not done us any favors. So, I mean, I'm for instance working with some clients there on the waterfront, in the watershed, the creative businesses there. And I'm telling you, it's until tourism returns, those businesses are either going to have to find a new way of creating income, or they have to draw on the little reserves that they've been able to put aside, and Mercy is also asking if there are any indicators to help business owners determine when to seek rescue interventions. Okay, so there's some questions coming through, more so than comments about what the challenges are that small businesses face. But let's hold those questions. We will have enough time to go into more discussions. Perhaps, Kenneth, if we can bring you in now, sort of to share with us from your perspective, Dr. Kenneth Moodley. Also, you are a board member of IBASA, I think, Kenneth, if I'm right.
That's correct. That's correct.
A practitioner that's been very involved in applying tools like Lean Sigma approaches to business management, and then as a licensed business rescue practitioner, also knowing what those projects look like. When we prepared for this, Mpho asked Kenneth, can you share the magic formula that you've been able to identify? And Kenneth shared with him, but he's still looking for the magic formula. So it is a new field and an evolving field that we are getting our heads around. But Kenneth, can you share with us, sort of, and I mean, the perspective being how we prepare ourselves, sort of as practitioners, sort of we can be proactive in making sure that we are prepared for taking on new services in this space.
Cool, awesome. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that intro. And yeah, happy to be here, glad to be here. So thanks for the opportunity and thanks to everyone for being here and to give us the opportunity to sort of chat and share some of our thoughts, and maybe later we get to the Q&A and have a bit of discussion as well, which would be great. So Chris, I think some of those questions that came through, we will touch on it. I've got 2 slides as sort of to give me some guidance, and we'll chat about that a little. But it's quite interesting. I just want to comment on the polls. So on poll 1, there was a 69% who said they're getting ready for business rescue. But there was probably more than 80% that said they're either getting ready or they're involved in some sort of business rescue / turnaround. Yeah, 69, 16, 13, etc. Based on the definition that Mwendabai has just given us, which talks about the formal regulated business rescue process versus, let's call it the informal, which is really around turnaround, etc. I'm sure if we had, I'm not saying we should, but I'm saying if we had to do that poll now, I'm sure there's a lot of the individuals on the session would actually say, actually, hang on, we are actually involved in it in some shape or form. Maybe not the formal one, but certainly involved in it. Yeah? Then on the, on the second one, in terms of the poll, in terms of some of the SMME challenges that they face, and the indicators, and some of the questions around what are the indicators. Unfortunately, you're right, there is no silver bullet. There's no magic wand. And it really comes down to the saying that we don't know what we don't know. And if you take the SMME, it's the same thing. Remember, these SMMEs and entrepreneurs, they don't have MBAs and they don't have marketing degrees or engineering degrees or accounting or legal, not all the time. So therefore, they don't know. And Mpho, this is a challenge, I think, and I know there's a couple other of the IBASA directors on, and I think we need to take this challenge on to say, how do we play that role to not just educate ourselves and fellow business advisors on what skill set they need, but how do we educate entrepreneurs so that they recognize what it is they need and where it is they are. And that's some of the challenges I think we need to think through. Chris, if you can maybe just put up the slides, I'll touch a little bit more on that as well. Chris, please remind me as well, how much of time do I have? Because, I do tend to like talking sometimes.
I will switch your slides off when your time is up.
Okay, perfect. This is what happens when you give one guy the power over the mute button, eh? Cool. Sorry, Chris, I can't see the screen. I'm not sure if it's only me. The screen on the left-hand side is sort of blocked off. I'm not sure if everybody has the same problem. Okay, there's a sort of a gray block on the left.
Is that better now? Is that better now?
No, there's a gray block on the left.
Oh, okay, so
I'm not sure if it's just me. I can talk through because I know what's on the slide, but if the other individuals can't see.
If you can proceed, Kenneth, and I'll try to sort out the gray block for us quickly.
Okay, perfect. So guys, as Mwendabai said, last year when we did this presentation, we spoke about business rescue challenges. And what I've done is I've actually said, from a business advisor point of view, we should look at these as what are the opportunities for us as individuals to say, let's see how we get involved in this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly touch on some of the practical challenges, and then we'll talk about the opportunities. So the first one is that, and I'm going to overlap a little bit with Mwendabai here as well, is that BRP requires a lot of time, which then means it comes with a lot of cost, okay? But the opportunity for us then is, as a business advisor, how do we get involved? Because like Mwendabai said, I'm trying to tie everything in, is that there's a high failure rate. And one of the reasons for the high failure rate is that the proper skill set is not in place to actually ensure that we are able to turn these businesses around. Or alternatively, maybe it's a case of, in the last bullet point there says too little, too late. So even your entrepreneur waits way too long before he decides, how do I go about this, and how do I find the help I need? Okay, and by then you're on the operating table with minimal chance of survival or rescue. And then obviously it's an emotional decision. Business owners, entrepreneurs, they're very attached obviously to their idea and their businesses. And it's almost like admitting defeat, because business rescue almost sounds like that. Whereas turnaround, however, has a different connotation, because you're not so far gone, you at least recognize it. So what I want to bring your attention to is the diagram on the right-hand side, and just the 3 blocks. And the CI stands for continuous improvement, which then goes into business rescue business turnaround in the middle block, and then business rescue on the extreme right. And you can see that your rate of success as time goes by diminishes, with business rescue being the lowest. And the way I like to describe this is, in CI, you've got the entrepreneur who knows that for them to be competitive and at the top of the game, they have to continuously look at improving their supply chains, their operations, their financials, their cash flow management, etc., all aspects of the business. They understand that. And therefore, those individuals will come to people like us and say, how do we put in a program? How do we do this project? How do we continuously fix? And they build capability in that space. The second column, which is around business turnaround, is where they realize that they are bleeding. They realize that this plane that they are flying is not as efficient as it can be, and that they are potentially losing fuel, or they're losing engine capacity, or whatever the case is. And if they do nothing, they will crash. So what they do there then is they then say, how do I fix it? Now, please remember what I said earlier, which is they don't know what they don't know. So they might not even realize that they've got these problems. The trick or the challenge is then how do we also approach those people? And I think, Mpho, that's a challenge I think we must take on as well, is how do we support business advisors to sort of link them with these entrepreneurs and teach entrepreneurs so that they recognize the warning signs of when they are actually in trouble. Okay, and that's business turnaround. Business rescue is where they've waited too long, too little, too late. They basically are on the verge of crashing, and then they want to go the formal route of business rescue. And a lot of them do that, by the way, because they are hoping that following, you know, the Chapter 6 regulations gives them some respite in the sense of they can keep creditors at arm's reach for a little while whilst they try and fix. But like Mwendabai said, the success rate is under 10%. So we know that in the current environment, with the current sort of guidelines, it does not work as efficiently and as effectively as we want. And this, for me, is where the opportunity for business advisors come in. And sorry, by the way, they also realize that, and if you can go maybe to the next slide, Chris, please. One of the things they also realize is that very often you get your legal guys getting involved in the formal business rescue. And in my opinion, at that stage, the legal eagles, with all due respect to them and their skill set, they are trying to help the business to crash land in as softly as possible, okay? But they might not necessarily have the holistic approach or the holistic skill set to basically help that business develop that turnaround strategy. And I'm using that words purposefully because I want you to remember what Mwendabai said. In a business rescue process, you still have to put a rescue plan, okay? Now, whether you call that a rescue plan or whether you call it a business turnaround strategy or plan, it's much of a muchness because it's really about identifying what's going wrong and identifying how are you going to fix it. Now, you have to have the right skill set to be able to do that. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that as business advisors, we also automatically must become a financial expert and a legal expert. What CIPC is also recognized is that how do we create an environment that all these professionals with their different skill sets get together and apply their skills to a particular business to ensure success. And this, for me, is where, as a business advisor, you get yourself ready to operate in that space, to be able to partner up with other business rescue practitioners, be it they're coming from a legal fraternity or a financial fraternity, but you got a space to play in and you bring something to the table, okay? So for me, that's sort of the opportunity that you can play as a business rescue advisor. And this is where I think, given that opportunity, the question is, how do we ready ourselves for that space? And I'm just going to go back to the first poll, where there's quite a decent percentage that said you're getting ready. My challenge or my question to you is, are you getting ready by understanding the act or understanding the regulatory requirement? If you are, great. But my challenge would be, in what other areas are you getting ready? Because to develop a turnaround plan, you can't only understand one aspect of the business. It doesn't mean you must become an expert in all aspects, but you must have holistic business advisory skills and understanding. And then maybe you're going to specialize in the marketing aspect. Like for myself, I specialize in the supply chain aspect. Someone else could be in different areas. But develop your skills in your particular niche area. And let's be honest, we all probably came from a specific niche area. The question now is, how do we then develop the skills to make us holistic? Because it's business advisor. And business is not just marketing or sales or finance or HR or supply chain. It's really cuts across. And for me, that holistic thinking is what's missing, both in the turnaround space and in the formal business rescue space. And for me, that's a big opportunity where us as business advisors can start making sure that our skill set talks to that holistic approach, which will enable us to put that holistic plan together and work with cross-functional team members to deliver on that plan, okay? And yes, whilst you're doing that, yeah, obviously also get prepared for the formal business rescue process and understand those elements as well. So in summary, to wrap up, I can see Chris giving me the death stare there. So just to summarize, okay, there's challenges. Those challenges is translating into opportunities for individuals like ourselves, because there is a realization that the failure rate is high because we do not have the right skill set and the right type of approach to business rescue, as well as if we want to prevent you from getting to formal business rescue, let's see how we can catch the organizations within the business turnaround or even the CI space. But either way, it's up to us as individuals, and this is the opportunity, is where we develop our skills in those areas to ready us, because the opportunity will come. It's not far down the line, and Mwendabai is a lot more closer to that detail than I am. It will come. We need to make sure we're ready. Okay? I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Chris,
thank you very much, Kenneth. No, they were aptly said and aptly summarized too. It wasn't a death stare, it was kind of a just nudge. Yeah, so there are a few questions coming through, including that some of the things that you have started to raise now, so we can perhaps address that too. And then we've got another poll that's running, and I see some of people in the room are already kind of voting on that. And the question is, what kind of turnaround projects would you like to be involved in? So panelists, you can vote too. Large projects as registered business rescue practitioners, so that's the formal kind of endorsed by the courts process. Small projects also in that business rescue space, and then as non-legal or non-accounting practitioners. So that could be as part of those formal processes where perhaps another business rescue practitioner is appointed by the court to manage the project, but you can be as a support service provider. For large firms experiencing distress, for small, you can select more than one, by the way, here too. For smaller firms experiencing distress, as COVID-19 response service provider, we haven't really spoken about that, but a lot of turnaround at the moment has to do with being able to respond to the pandemic. And then if there are any others, you can type in the text chat what that is. And I see that the people are voting quite ferociously. Just over half have voted. So if you haven't voted yet, you can do so. For small firms experiencing distress is 2/3 of people that have voted thus far are saying that is what they would like to focus on. We're going to give it another few seconds. So if you want to vote, just tick there the ones. You can select more than one. Select those that you would like to be focusing on, and then you submit your vote. There's a large vote coming in, and then we'll end the poll in. I see some more people are voting, so I'll give you a second more. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. And then I want to share the results, and now the screen has disappeared. Okay, this is some of the things that are happening. Let's see if I click there. Oh, there it is. Let me see if I can share the results now. You should be able to see that. Interesting, 70% for smaller businesses experiencing distress. So it's not necessarily in the formal, it's that turnaround space. Kenneth, are you surprised? Mpho? I see Mwendabai switched off his camera. I hope you can be back with us now.
You know, actually, what surprises me is that the percentage totals up to over 100%. Which,
yeah, but it's because you can choose more than one option there.
Yeah. So yeah. So 70% is actually not 70%. It's probably 1/3 or so if I just take the total. But yeah, no, definitely not surprised that such a large amount of us sort of play in that space. I think the opportunity is then also how do we open up those spaces, and then after we do that, I think we need to start looking at more the medium-sized businesses as well.
Yeah, Mwendabai?
I think.
Sorry, Mpho, you can go first.
I was just going to say, it's also just to support what Dr. Kenneth has just said, in terms of most of us playing in that space, but also the nature of business rescue. You know, when you think of it, that, you know, there's certain individuals who have already been given the opportunity to operate within the larger project or to take on larger project. So as a start, you might, as business advisor, we might feel comfortable playing within the small firm experiencing distress, because we're probably slightly intimidated by the club that has playing in the bigger league, but I will also put that very same challenge to all of us and say we shouldn't be intimidated by the club, which is selected few who have extensive experience, sometimes with limited experience but fresh ideas and innovation. We might be able to really surprise and do better work. So let's not limit our participation within the small or small businesses that are experiencing distress.
Indeed. Mwendabai, you wanted to add something?
Yes, no, definitely. I think as Paul said, we should really not be intimidated. One important point that Dr. Moodley raised, which I didn't speak about in the first session, was around the issue of the skill set. That one thing that is undisputed at the moment within government and within CIPC is the fact that your skill set actually needs to be so unique, it needs to be so rounded for you to successfully carry out rescue to a point where the large part of a failure, in as much as it can be attributed to the rescuing process starting too late for most entities, but it's also due to the BRPs not having the skills. So CIPC is aware that the legal practitioners and the accounting professionals have dominated the space. And they're also aware that it's because of these skills, the skills which they've got, which is not rounded. It's a reason why the business rescue has not been successful. And what they've actually noticed is that what is mostly missing, which you're going to find in the regulation 126, which when they specify, they actually specify 3 skills in regulation 126. They say you must have a legal, somebody must be from a legal background, accounting background, and the third one is management. And what CIPC realized is that the management part and the entrepreneurship part is actually the missing link. Your legal person has the right skill set to manage the distress, during business rescue arising from creditors suing and wanting to attach assets and stuff like that. But they might not necessarily have the requisite skills to come up with operational efficiencies or good marketing strategies to turn the business around. And therefore, we need to look at the opportunities from that particular eye to say, I can either help my small businesses because these are the ones I'm obviously exposed to, but also for your medium-sized businesses, they might have BRPs. You might not even be the formally appointed BRP. But remember that BRP, if he's from a legal background, he doesn't have business skills. So you can work or partner with such a BRP to bring the skill set of entrepreneurship and business and turnaround skill set, which might be missing. Or it might be an accountant, and you will be complementing that particular person. So in essence, we can actually target the opportunities across the entire spectrum. And you don't have to be specifically appointed formally as a BRP. You can act in the capacity of a support or a person providing support to a BRP.
Mwendabai, then the actual BRP, the practitioner, the one that's appointed by the court to manage and implement a project, becomes your client.
That would be 100% correct, yes. That would be 100% correct.
Yeah. So maybe you can comment, and Kenneth, you too, those practitioners that are then not positioning themselves to become registered business rescue practitioners, but be supportive to them. How do we go about in doing that and in positioning ourselves and in reaching out to the practitioners, to the registered business rescue practitioners? Kenneth, you want to go first?
Actually, no, I was hoping Mwendabai would go, but that's fine. So I think there's two, and I think there was a question earlier where someone said, how do we approach them? And really this is about networking, and it's about actually you as an individual having a well thought out sort of marketing and sales strategy to enable you to approach those types of individuals. Because remember, now what we're saying is it's not only that micro SMME that's your client, now it's the business rescue practitioner themselves. So it might be a lawyer. And the question is, how do you expand your network to go and do those types of things? Now, yes, you can use various platforms, like LinkedIn and those types of things. If you've got people in your network who are in that space, you can actually start exploring those networks via them. So if you know an accountant, for example, you go have the conversation, because they themselves may not be operating in that space. But once you've triggered the thought, you actually find that the network grows. So I think that's the one opportunity. And I think the other one, which obviously tends to take a little bit longer and it's not so much in your control, is the reliance on institutions like CIPC and some of those big creditors, etc., to start saying, okay, but this is what we want to do. We want to create this type of environment that enables business advisors with more holistic skills to come to the party. Okay, so that's the other option. I think that's the space where professional bodies can also make a contribution.
Yeah. Right. Mwendabai, you want to add to that?
Yes, no, definitely. So I think I'd indicated in the first session that CIPC is going to be pushing for more of a setup of dual appointments. And the reason why they came up with that was actually to broaden that particular skill set. So there will be opportunities where you might not be appointed as a main BRP, but you could be appointed as, say, a junior BRP together with a senior for you to be able to bring that skill set in. But I think predominantly, like Dr. Moodley said, broadening that network is key. We know that the legal practitioners are heavily involved in that area because when you look at formal business rescue, it's a legal process. So obviously it favors them. So then it becomes important for us as business advisors to network with the legal practitioners. We must network with the accountants. We know that accountants are sometimes the first point of contact for, especially your SMEs. They trust the accountants with their lives in terms of what they tell them. So it is then important that we also network with the accountants.
Right.
And just to add, Christoff, on what both Dr. Kenneth and Mwendabai has just said, I think from a professional body perspective, it's quite critical that we create some kind of profile of existing skills that exist within our respective, let me just say, within IBASA, so that businesses that might need such services know that, there are advisors accredited and registered with the institution of business advisor who are capable of helping you to turn your organization around, and we can take them through and say, before you get to the ICU stage where it becomes a rescue. And from a professional body perspective, I also see the opportunity for us to be more aggressive in terms of, painting a positive narrative around the business rescue, because currently when you think of business rescue, it's like a no-go zone. So if we can start telling positive stories so that business owners can appreciate the service and be able to utilize it and not see it as a thorn or a negative thing to approach, then it will make it easier for the advisor to grow simultaneously or in proportion with the industry, because now the profession of business rescue or business turnaround from a business advisory perspective is now being appreciated and acknowledged as a resource to be utilized by SMMEs or large businesses.
Yeah. So we've got a few people in Mpho that's been very active on the questions and comments, including Mpho Chihele. So if you want to ask those questions that you've been posing for Mpho number 2, if I can put it that way today, And then also Vinod and Johannes and Guy, Harris, and I think those were the people that were very active in the questions. If you just raise your hand, sort of like Mpho has done, then we can introduce you to ask your question too. So Mpho Hole, can you ask those succinctly around the training opportunities and so on that you've been raising in the question and answer window?
Thanks, Chris. Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you well.
Thanks. Two things that maybe I see as opportunities. Maybe it could be something that is already in place within IBASA. Other than accreditation or certification as an advisor, is there an opportunity to accredit practitioners as turnaround, practitioners or specialists, so that it's specific, it's not just advisors. I know within the advisory space, turnaround is one of it, but maybe there could be an accreditation that says you are an advisor, but you specialize in turnaround, because I think the topic here is about rescuing. It's not about all of us becoming business rescue practitioners. It's about turning around before it gets to a legally cumbersome process. So that's the first opportunity. The second one is, in my experience, most SMEs, especially SMEs, mature businesses, maybe they behave differently. SMEs are not easy to adopt rescue or turnaround advisory. They tend to be stubborn and believe they know what they want. And what I've seen most of them to adopt turnaround and rescue is when they want something, either when they want to access a market or when they want funding. And whoever is on the other end can then say, you know what, I think you've got a competitive offering, but I see signs that need attention. I can only fund you or give you access to this market if you do something about your business. Because generally the businesses that are worth rescuing are those that have a market and have a competitive offering, whether it's a product or service. So those are the ones that as advisors, we can actually invest our energy in supporting to actually turn them around. So partnering with potential funders, whether in the public space, government, or maybe even in the private space, could be an opportunity for advisors to partner with them to say, when you see a potentially investable business, I'm available as a specialist to help you turn around it so that you can invest low and come out with a higher ROI as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Mpho. I'm also going to ask that we've got Vinod and Johannes capable of also making their points, and then we'll revert back to the panel. So welcome, Vinod. You made some points around training, and I'm not sure if it's just a question or a comment too.
No, thank you, and thank you, Kenneth and Mwendabai and Mpho, for the input. Yeah, I think that, when one looks at business rescue, it's a very challenging area. It's a highly specialized area, and if you look at it, I think Dr. Moodley alluded to it, is that you can't go on your own in lots of ways, because you need the legal skills, you need the financial skills, and you need the actual business advising or turnaround type of skills. So you need a huge depth of knowledge. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm just saying this thing, and that's probably why the space of business rescue is actually the playing field of a lot of the legal eagles who actually have a team.
Yeah.
But I think that also what would be nice is that the CIPC could sort of impose a sort of an internship, because I think that would help a lot of business advisors going forward. Because I can tell you now is that there's not a day you don't learn as a business advisor. As a business advisor, you should actually be known. You should actually know when to start saying, "Hey, Mister, you got to go to business rescue, or otherwise you're in trouble." So I think those are your duties. So I think for IBASA, it's an opportunity, and of course there's a CPD element to it also, which we got to be mindful of. But all in all, I think it's a process, And I think that thanks to the gentleman lady for giving us some information on further information. But still, I think there's a lot more work that needs to be done for business rescue, for IBASA to stake its claim in the area as an accredited provider. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Vinod, like always. Johannes, and then we'll move on to the panel to respond, Kenneth and Mwendabai specifically, but Mpho, perhaps you, I see Vinod has given you a challenge there. So Johannes, thanks for the comments that you made around the platforms and, sort of perhaps also the dimension of bringing the accounting profession into it and combining those two, which I see is what you're commenting around. Johannes, you can speak. You are able to speak. Okay, it looks like Johannes can't speak right now. But it was questions around, sort of the platform where the information is published around rescue and so on. So maybe Mwendabai and Kenneth, you can comment about that as well. And then I see Guy Harris has left the room just now, but he was saying that we must focus on what those issues are that are causing failure in the smaller firms if we're supporting them so that we can develop our competencies there. And it's an interesting question. So guys asking, is business rescue more effective than the old judicial management or is still stigmatized? So that stigma around going into liquidation. So perhaps if you can comment on that, Mwendabai, I see your microphone is open. If you want to switch on your camera, that would be great too.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me just attempt to address some of the questions which have been raised. I'll start with the one that Mpho mentioned around partnering with funders. We are in full agreement. So in the Business Rescue Liaison Committee of the CIPC, the challenge that we realized in terms of the opportunity for businesses, now we talk about opportunities for the businesses in terms of business rescue, was that the opportunity was limited because smaller businesses wouldn't afford the process. So then that's when the discussions and engagements with other departments within government started, where now the Department of Small Business Development is spearheading it. I think that's more of their area of jurisdiction, where they will then look at a sort of like a support or funding model that is going in the future to be able to avail sort of like your business rescue provision and all its benefits, but availed to your smaller to medium-sized businesses at a much affordable rate or fully, subsidized rate, if I might put it like that. So that is the angle from which the Department of Small Business Development is getting involved in. So definitely. Then I think there was a question on the judicial management. I think for us who know the history in terms of the Judicial Management Act under the Insolvency Act, we know that it attempted to provide sort of like a framework for rescuing the businesses and protecting businesses, but it was never that effective because your Insolvency Act was always pro-creditor. So there was too much power that rested with the creditor as opposed to the business. So your Chapter 6 of the Companies Act came to balance that out and provide meaningful moratorium or the protection for businesses whilst they then underwent through their restructuring processes. So to be honest, I think even the academics would confirm it. We are yet to just see an official report in terms of the successes of that. But I would say business rescue is definitely more attractive and more effective to resuscitate or rehabilitate businesses than judicial management, because judicial management was more as a pre-step to liquidation. Yes, I think in that particular aspect. Then lastly, I think there was a question on training. I think I did respond on the chat, Vinod. There are a couple of programs which are available. The University of Pretoria has got a very good, excellent CRA program that they are running. The only thing that we need to be cautious of is that we must remember that these training programs will always be sort of like leaning towards one aspect. Like say, for instance, the universities are going to present turnaround and business rescue more from an academic perspective. What you might find is that maybe there may be professional bodies running workshop where they actually put practical cases. So you might be able to pick, for instance, maybe the African Bank case, which is a practical case that happened, and study it and see what were the issues, why was it in distress, and how was obviously the rescue effected. And then the last question, I think, was around the last question was on the indicators of distress. And I could see that point coming through more and more on the charts. I think the emphasis there is to say, if we can identify points of distress, then we can make business rescue more meaningful. The honest answer to that is it's a very difficult thing. So for businesses, like you saw on Dr. Moodley's slide, where we had continuous improvement and we had turnaround. When you are in that space, in most cases, businesses actually don't know what they don't know. And strange enough, we try to sensitize clients that if you got into your Companies Act, Chapter 28, Chapter 29, Chapter 30, where the Companies Act talks about financial records and maintaining financial records, doing analysis, it actually does state that it's a director's responsibilities, it's a director's obligation to carry out what they call solvency tests and to carry out financial analysis, to test the so-called financial distress. The Companies Act doesn't call it financial distress, but it's more of testing, testing your solvency really. And that should then, they discover that the company has a likelihood of getting financially distressed, or the company is unlike to be able to meet their obligation within 6 months, then the directors at that particular point are obligated to actually constitute business rescue proceedings. But what you find, especially in your small to medium-sized businesses, is that a lot of directors are not aware of even what the provisions of Section 28, Section 29, and Section 30 of the Companies Act are. So then it becomes imperative, I think, as business advisors, that we step up. Not only should we educate ourselves, but we should educate the businesses that we are actually advising, because they are honestly not aware.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, perhaps, that we can take to the Department of Small Business Development when we engage with them too. It's not only the practitioners that needs to be educated and capacitated, but also the businesses. Kenneth, I'm going to come to you for sort of addressing any of those questions that stand out for you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time fast. And then just as a reminder, we will be talking about IBASA updates and so on with Mpho just now, sort of after Q2 or so. Just a reminder that there is the next webinar. Everyone can register for that already. As you can see in the text chat, the link is there, nextwebinar.-epr.org. If you go there, you can register for that as a quick announcement before we get to Kenneth. And then also, you would have seen in the text chat, we asked that you help IBASA with some feedback on your stance on things, your understanding of things. It's very quick, 7 questions. If you have your phone ready, you can just scan the QR code there. It will take you to the page. Otherwise, the link is there in the text chat for you to complete that Google form and give some of your perspectives on it. That's everything in terms of the kind of organizational stuff that we still need to cover before we get to IBASA's news and updates with Mpho. So Kenneth, if there are any of the questions you want to focus on still, and then Mwendabai, Kenneth, and Mpho, a short last comment from each of you on the topic at hand today. But first, over to you, Kenneth.
Okay, perfect.
If there are any of the questions that you still want to address.
Yep, thanks, Chris. No, so listen, Mwendabai has actually answered those questions extremely well, so you saved me a lot of work. Just the one thing I do want to add on is on the question around what causes failures or what causes distress, and I agree with Mwendabai that it's extremely difficult. But I think there's a couple of things here for me. One is it's about helping your clients understand their business. So this talks around KPI management and those types of things, to being able to understand what your leading or lagging KPIs are, so you can pick up these things. But the second aspect is around how do you, and IBASA has a role to play, is how do we continuously expand the network expand the education, expand the partnerships, because you can't do the first part around KPIs to help them identify when they're in distress if you can't even get through the front door. Okay, so I think that's an important, those two aspects for me are linked. And I think part of the development and training for ourselves is not just around KPI management, but it's about helping entrepreneurs and even for ourselves understanding where are the bottlenecks in the business, and then putting down the plans on how do we overcome those bottlenecks. Yeah. So for me, just to talk about that, and then Chris, if you allow me, I just want to go on the overall comment, just to wrap up. And I think excellent discussions, excellent questions. But just to wrap up, I think this is a space that has a lot of opportunity, as we've spoken about. And if I look at the comments coming through, I think everybody on this webinar actually realizes it. For me, it's about stressing the importance of educating ourselves, educating the market, garnering the right type of networking opportunities and the right type of partnerships with various players to give ourselves the best possible advantage to open some of those doors. And I think it's up to us as individuals to then make sure that we fill our skill set so that we're ready to take advantage of those opportunities when it presents itself. Yeah? So that's my parting words. Thank you very much for a terrific webinar, and thanks for attending.
Thanks for sharing your knowledge and insights to Kenneth. Mwendabai, if I can go over to you for a last comment.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the people that were able to join in. Very interesting and important discussion as well. And I think for me, the critical point here is I hope we've now realized how critical the steps before the formal business rescue process is. The continuous improvement phase and the turnaround phase. I want to believe that it's responsibility of every business advisor, and that depending on how well we execute our services within those spaces, it actually does affect the success rate in the formal business rescue. So if we execute well, our businesses don't have to go through formal business rescue eventually. So we do have quite a huge role to play, and I'm looking forward to everyone participating in that particular space. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to our two guests today. And Paul, do you want to make a last comment on the topic before we go to Ibarsa's news and updates? You are muted. Okay, you're unmuted. Oh, there you are.
Thank you, Chris, and the panelists, Mwendabai and Dr. Kenneth. I don't want to spoil everything that they have said. I think they've really summed up everything so well, and they've given me something from an IBASA perspective to ponder on in terms of the opportunities and the public-private partnerships that we need to create for our members in order for growth to become a reality. So I'm happy and excited that we had this opportunity. At least one now can be able to really craft a proper way forward that will be enabling for our stakeholders going forward. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll move on to, but before we do so, I just want to give a shout out to the person that's keeping the fort there on the Facebook page. One of our viewers, Enrico Kumuto, so Enrico, you don't shoot me for this, but there's a guy, he's been kind of actively there while the rest of us have been here on Zoom. He's been commenting and participating there on Facebook. It's of course another way to engage here too. So thank you very much for that. And then of course the rest of us have been a good 70 people or so at one stage, I think, here in Zoom. So it's great to be connecting, even if it's on an electronic platform like this. But let's get over to the IBASA news, and Paul, I'm going to hand over to you for that, and perhaps put up the slides too that we have with some of the information on when you need them. Just say so.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. I think I'm going to also keep it very brief because I've been talking about the AGM for the past 5 months, which is now, we are now coming to the end of the road, where I can safely say the date has been pinned down. The 31st of May is the date for the AGM annual general meeting for IBASA. The link is open for registration for members to join and participate in the AGM. We'll also be sending a lot of communication to remind you to register and participate at the AGM. And I think what is most important that I want to emphasize is that we've also reopened the nomination, because we realized that there were certain things that were omitted, or we didn't, there was a slight oversight that we didn't pay attention to. And in order to make sure that there's transparency and fairness across the board, and we get the best candidates who will definitely provide the vision and help this organization to transform to greater heights, participate in the structures of the organization. So please take note, go to our website. All the information that I'm talking about is available on the website. And I look forward to seeing you at the next AGM. Thank you.
Right, so that was sweet and sound. So thank you everyone for joining us. We will be, you can actually look at the recording already on Facebook. We will be posting it to the website, and then there's also the blog posts that you can get onto on the IBASA website. By the way, if there was a topic in the past that we've covered in the CPD webinars and you want to page back, go to the IBASA website and you'll find that there are some articles that are posted there to summarize what's been covered here. So great, I must say, Eid Mubarak and blessed Ascension Day for those that are celebrating it today. But all of us, please stay safe with ourselves, with our customers, and yeah, the support of those that are affected by the pandemic, the businesses that are struggling. It's a very important time for us to stay positive and guide people in a realistic way, so they can create the business activities that we want and keep those businesses alive that can still add value. So have a good Thursday and see you at the next webinar. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Chris. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers all. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.